Hi, I'm Sonia Sapavan. Thank you all for joining us today. This is a four-part series. Last time we shared the overall concept of the three Ps to get better results faster in diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI. And today we'll talk more about the first P, which is for process. In a moment, we'll quickly review what the three Ps are. You can also see our recording of our previous session on all the three Ps on our events page at ouroffice.io/events. But first, just a bit about us. I'm CEO of our office, where we provide an end-to-end solution which works especially well for small and medium businesses who want to improve DEI. I started my career as a NASA engineer, and later I was an executive at Fortune 500 companies, where one of my other duties as assigned was to lead our DEI efforts. All team members at our office have similar lived experiences trying to improve DEI throughout their careers. In the last 3 years, we've been working together, applying the three Ps, and partnering with our customers to build more diverse, equitable, and inclusive workplaces. Now, before we get into the meat of this conversation, let's make sure you're familiar with the webinar tool. This is a 30-minute interactive webinar. There will be some polls to participate in, so please look for those. You can also use the chat function at the bottom of the screen to ask questions or provide inputs throughout the webinar. Lastly, please note this session is being recorded and will be available after the webinar on our events page at ouroffice.io/events. So let's start by making sure we're all on the same page about why DEI is a must-have today. Now, we see four key reasons for that: hiring and retention, business outcomes, emerging requirements and expectations, and brand and reputation. First, about hiring and retention. Today, over half of the workplace is actively planning to leave their jobs, and 80% of those candidates prioritize inclusion and want to feel that they belong. What's more, once they're hired, they're 3 times more likely to stay if you have an inclusive workplace. There's a lot of data about the second reason, that are business outcomes. One data point you may want to remember is that because of the positive business outcomes, inclusive organizations get about 8 times ROI, return on investment, from their DEI efforts. The third reason is probably least known, but whether you're a public company or not, there are increasing DEI requirements and regulations or expectations by key stakeholders like customers, investors, and employees that you need to be aware of, because they show a trend and they confirm that DEI is critical to any organization's performance. Examples of these include the SEC requirement for human capital disclosures, the NASDAQ diversity rule, the rising prominence of corporate social responsibility, or CSR, and the increasing focus on the S for the social element in ESG, and various other requirements or expectations by state and industry. Last but not least, regarding the last reason, according to PwC, 83% of all CEOs say that they see a benefit from DEI to their branding and reputation, which is significant in today's competitive market. And so hopefully these reasons have convinced you. Now, let's do a poll. As we put the poll up, please take a look and select which of these is a key reason for your organization to focus on DEI. Hiring and retention, business outcomes, emerging requirements and expectations, branding and reputation. Maybe it's something else that's not on this list, or maybe DEI is not a focus. So let's give it a minute and see how the polls come in. Okay, it looks like it's even between, hiring and retention is a bigger reason, maybe around 75%. Emerging requirements, about 25% right now. Let's give it a couple of more seconds here and see if anything else comes in. Okay, so we have 60% hiring and retention, 20% business outcomes, and 20% say emerging requirements and expectations. Thank you for that. We can close the poll now. So let's now talk about a little bit and remind you of what we mean by the 3 Ps. The 3 Ps are about a holistic approach, where you're not just looking at isolated initiatives or actions. Instead, you apply the 3 Ps, a proven process, first P, professional guidance, that's the second P, and a technology platform or a tool. In the last 3 years that we've been applying this approach, bringing all 3 Ps together, we have seen it deliver results faster than you may think, sometimes in a matter of a few weeks for small and medium-sized organizations. This goes across various industries and also different types of organizations, iconic brands, public companies, private ones, nonprofits. So let's also do a poll and find out which of these Ps is most needed in your organization. So we have another poll. Please select if your organization mostly needs a process, do you think, professional guidance, or a technology platform or a tool. Perhaps it's none of the above, or you're not sure. So let's give it a moment and see how those come in. Right now we have a proven process. Seems like everybody needs a proven process. Let's give it another couple of seconds. Professional guidance, of course, is also important, is coming in. And okay, so let's see. We have, we are getting to, as the numbers are coming in, we're getting to about 57% say a proven process, 28% say professional guidance, and there's 15% saying none of the above. So there's something else, maybe not these. Okay, well, thank you again for participating in this. Let's close the poll. And let's go to the main topic today. We're focusing on the first P, the process. Remember, we have 2 more 30-minute webinars in the next 2 weeks to cover the other 2 Ps, the professional guidance and the platform. So if one of those is most important to you, please try and tune in again. So let's now focus on the process. Like any other business objective, we see that having a well-defined process for DEI is most important. We call the process we use the ACT process, and that stands for Align, Connect, and Transform. Notice the order here is important. Our experience is you can't successfully connect and engage the organization unless there's alignment on the objectives and why they're important. That's really the most important thing that we stress. And only after you have alignment and engagement, you can truly start to transform the organization. So let's talk about each step of the ACT process in more detail, and then we'll share some case studies at the end as well. As we said, the first A stands for Align. You want to start with establishing your allies in this process. This starts by identifying the sponsor, the key ally, which we recommend should always be the top leader, like the CEO or equivalent. Sometimes it may be the board. And so that's really super important to have the authority and the focus of this be at the top level of the organization. But that's not enough. You also want champions who are other leaders across the organization, and also early adopters, key team members who are passionate and open-minded and truly want to contribute and lead the way towards a better workplace culture. The early adopters are typically individual contributors who are seen as influencers in the organization. Once you have the allies on board, this is that first step, and you've completed that, you need to conduct some objective assessments. Many organizations already do employee engagement surveys or variations of it, which may be focused on employee experience. What's less common is an assessment of the current state of your workplace culture from an infrastructure perspective. We have a maturity model instrument at our office that does this. For example, it scores the infrastructure in terms of the processes, policies, and benefits, which then leads to good indicators of an organization's readiness for making progress in DEI. The instrument then produces 4 scores plus an overall score. We also provide industry-specific benchmarks to compare your scores and see where you are relative to the best in class in your industry. In addition to these objective assessments, you want to do what we call listening. While there are many ways this can be done, you want to be sure that the purpose and the process for these is well communicated, that those involved know that their privacy will be respected, and there's no attribution or potential negative consequences for sharing in these sessions. We conduct both employee experience sessions and executive interviews. And since we are a third party and we create a very safe space for this, we get some of our most valuable inputs from these conversations. So once you have done the first three parts of this, you've done your assessments, you're listening, and you have your allies on board, you put all of this information together, and really the ultimate deliverable of this aligned phase is a well-defined DEI plan, which allows the organization to answer why, what, and how. The most important thing in the DEI plan is that it links your DEI objectives with the strategic priorities of the organization. That's the why. It does this while addressing the low-hanging fruit in terms of gaps and opportunities that were uncovered. So it is super important to make sure that the DEI plan has these elements. Feel free to share in the chat, perhaps what you have been doing yourselves, and if you have one of these elements of the DEI plan covered, or perhaps you have most of it covered. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about the next step. The second important step in this process, the ACT process, is engaging everyone and creating excitement and ownership. And that's why Connect comes next, which is the C in the ACT process. Here you want to communicate the DEI plan and educate everyone, encourage them to share their voice, their experiences, ideas, concerns, and questions. Today, there are effective ways to get 24/7 engagement digitally. For example, our office has a culture app. You see a screenshot of it here on this slide. It provides a safe environment that allows users to browse and share and engage anonymously if they prefer. Now, clearly organizations are at different stages of their DEI journey, and we always recommend a pace that moves the organization forward, but doesn't move it too fast, because that can sometimes have unintended consequences. So organizations typically start by inviting the allies and then adding a select few as they go, until gradually they build the trust in the organization to allow everyone to opt in and engage. In the last 3 years, we've seen organizations achieve significant engagement and improvement in trust and transparency using the Culture app, which really is important for creating an environment of psychological safety. Psychological safety is the foundation for inclusion and belonging. We actually have an upcoming webinar on November 3rd dedicated to a conversation on psychological safety with an expert. But suffice it to say here that once you build an environment that is psychologically safe, you start feeling that elusive sense of inclusion and belonging that unlocks people's individual potential and propels the organization towards amazing outcomes. So it's really important. Now, after you have alignment and you have engaged everyone, it's time to get rigorous with implementing and tracking metrics to measure progress. This is what we call the transform phase, because as you start taking action and measuring and tracking your progress towards those objectives, you empower the whole organization to really understand what's working and what's not working, and you can adjust to see results. Many organizations measure few metrics, like on diversity representation and pay gap, which is very good. But we know that inclusion and workplace culture and that sense of inclusion and belonging are often nuanced and also quite local, like the climate. And that's why after a lot of effort, many organizations find that they fall short of their expectations or hit a plateau because they're not having enough of a comprehensive look. It's important to have this comprehensive understanding of all the dimensions of DEI in your organization. Our office has defined, for example, about 50 key performance indicators, or KPIs, that cover everything from the hiring pipeline to career development, like performance ratings, promotions, succession planning, and scores also for the infrastructure, processes and policies, and also for the employee engagement and inclusion. So to summarize, what you always want in a successful initiative of any kind is to have a solid strategy that is linked with the right tactics that produce results. This is especially important in the HR function, where the stakes are quite high, given the responsibility for managing the most valuable asset of any organization, its people. So the ACT process empowers HR to be strategic and proactive leaders by helping you define a strategy and linking it with effective tactics, going through methodically and first aligning the leadership, then connecting the team, and finally transforming the whole organization. So let's look at a summary of some case studies and how this ACT process that we've been talking about has worked over the last 3 years. First, we have a couple of examples from the align phase, the A in the ACT process. The first case study here is about linking D&I objectives with the strategic priorities at a small e-commerce company. In this case, the CHRO was able to partner with the CMO, the Chief Marketing Officer, and together they were able to accelerate the company's expansion into new markets, which in this case was women of color and the LGBTQ community. They increased this pace of getting to this market expansion by 50%. The second example here is in the nonprofit sector. Here, again in the align phase, in the early assessments, they found out that there were some gaps in their benefits in parental leave and family care, which helped them increase their retention of top talent by 30%. The next two are examples from the connect phase, the C in the ACT process. One of our customers saw a year-over-year increase of 217% in engagement by providing a safe environment for employees using the Culture app. Now, this kind of an increase is huge given that employee engagement has been stagnant right around 30% for a couple of decades. This is according to the Gartner data. Another one of our customers saw a 2 times increase in positive comments from new hires during onboarding because of the Culture app and just this overall approach that they had taken that's rigorous and very structured towards DEI. And then they noticed that there was an uptick in hiring as these new hires were spreading the word and referring to their friends to consider the company as a great employer. So they became brand ambassadors, if you will. On the last piece of this, so we've talked about a couple examples on align, a couple more on the connect steps, so the A and the C in the ACT process. Now on the last one, the T in the transform, frankly, there are lots of examples from the transform phase because that's when you start measuring. We mentioned one here, the last one on the list, where a mid-sized client was able to identify middle management diversity as a strategic focus, which led to 4 times increase in their mid-manager diversity in a few short months. This was without setting any specific goals or quotas. It was really because of the awareness that the organization had about where to focus and where they needed to make progress. This improved the retention of top talent, also because people started to see opportunities for all kinds of people at all levels of the organization. So hopefully these examples help you see the real results you can get from applying a disciplined and proven process like the ACT process. So with that, I would like to also tell you a little bit about the next webinars that we have upcoming. We covered the first P now in the 3 Ps, or we covered the what we call the 3 Ps. The process is the one that we covered today. It will be a lot of fun now to continue this series, and so you can join us, especially on the next one, October 21st. This one is dedicated to the second P, the professional guidance. Here we will have D&I advisors who have worked with many different clients and situations, talking about their own journeys and experiences without any attribution, of course. Now, please mark your calendars. And let's make October a month of learning with this continuing webinar series. And also remember, you can watch recordings of all of the events at ouroffice.io/events. Meanwhile, please don't hesitate to email us. You can email us at DEI@ouroffice.io. Again, that is DEI@ouroffice.io. You can see it on this slide. If you have any questions or want to talk about your specific situation and D&I efforts, this is the best way to get a hold of us. Now we are happy to answer some questions. I see a couple here. There's one, asking, are there any safeguards in place to prevent unwanted posts on the platform? Yes, there certainly is. This whole platform you're referring to, our Office solution, is built with all kinds of safeguards and role-based access and controls in place, of course, to make it appropriate for a corporate environment. In the case of, for example, posts, certainly they can be removed by the enterprise admin and also the DEI advisor that we assign from our side. So there is that. And there's also profanity check to make sure that there's nothing inappropriate that is posted. In fact, they cannot be posted if there's any certain words associated in the post. There's a discussion here about, what is the most challenging part of the process. The challenge really depends on the organization. The most important, we believe, the critical step, again, is alignment. So that aligned phase in the ACT process is very important to get that up front. If you are not able to get that up front, you don't have enough conversation about it, it will be very difficult to make progress. And it will also be very difficult to continue the effort and make it sustainable, especially as there is change in leadership. So it is really, I think, the most important. That step sometimes is more challenging, but sometimes not. And then connecting the organization, again, in that order of the ACT process, the A, the C, and the T, come in that order because, frankly, it's the importance of each step leading to the next one. And the challenge, again, can be a little bit different across organizations, but the criticality of it is in that order. There's a question about interest in best practices for rolling out connecting the whole organization. We absolutely have a process that helps with that as well. That's part of what we provide is guidance and support throughout the effort. Certainly communications ahead of time. Again, describing the why. Why are we doing this? Connecting it with the strategic priorities and ensuring that all the voices are heard. That's the connect phase. That is really important. So again, communication in various media, because not everybody is reachable through the same means, depending on their role, depending on their preference. So we encourage organizations to communicate in many ways and to really share and be transparent about why the organization is taking this on. So that's really the pitfall is if there's not good early engagement and good content. We always encourage organizations to be really authentic about the kind of content that's shared. That's when you can reach people that have unique needs that are underrepresented in the broader spectrum. And that is what you really want to do in terms of being inclusive and making everybody feel like they belong. There's a question about, can we help get all senior leaders aligned as an ally? That is absolutely the intent of that first step of Align, is to get and encourage the senior leaders to provide their input early on. It's really important to have them not just in principle say that they're allies, but truly to have ownership of the objectives and why we're doing it. And again, that is a key place where we start that. There was a question, I think, also earlier about are we able to assist organizations with aligning D&I goals to the business objectives? Yes, that is the critical step, and that is where, again, we think everybody should start. And certainly we do that with our clients, but whichever way you go about it, it is super important. to first get a agreement on what are the key strategic objectives of the organization. We tend to focus on 12 months. We always talk about, let's focus on 12 months and make sure that we have a near-term view of what the strategic objectives are, and then connect the DEI objectives with those. And then, of course, it can get updated every 12 months as a minimum, or perhaps more often as needed. So I don't see any more questions. This has been very good. Thank you for that. And also, it has been a great conversation. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in today, or if you're watching this after the fact, if you're watching the recording, we encourage you again to sign up for other events and watch other recordings, and also be in touch at DEI@our-office.io. We look forward to talking with you about your situation, your specifics, and helping where we can. Again, thank you so much, and see you on the next webinar next week. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.